I guess we begin with Hurricane Helene.
Unfortunately, we got a lot of information to pass on to you with this update, and some of it is increasingly dire for the people in the...
You can see we've got really this conveyor belt of tropical moisture just pushing more
All
rain.
of these areas have the potential for heavy rain and flash flooding.
We were going to get something here, and increasingly it seemed like it was going to be something not great. But when we woke up the next morning, it was a lot worse than we were expecting.
We're looking at the potential for significant rain and flooding.
I guess early Friday morning the storm hit, and I mean, I don't think anybody around here had ever seen anything like what happened.
Hannah took one of our boys just down the road here to Main Street, Canton. It was all underwater.
I think a tornado or something came through where our house is, because we've got over 300 trees down at our house. One of our houses had a tree through it.
Wow.
Two of my trucks got, well, it's funny, the night before the storm, we moved all 4 of our cars out into the yard as a precaution. Well, we woke up Friday morning, one tree had fell and hit all 4 cars.
And we couldn't talk to anybody. There was no cell, there was no connectivity. We did know enough to know we couldn't go anywhere yet. They were saying, stay off the roads, let the first responders do their thing. Mm-hmm. And so that first day or two was very isolating in a way.
Our neighbors got a Starlink satellite internet, and so we would go up late at night after our kids were in bed, sit on their curb, and start reading the news. And I feel like that was sort of overwhelming, because it was like, oh no, it's not just here seeing about Asheville and Black Mountain and Swannanoa, and it was just kind of like wave after wave of bad news.
We had to cut about 25 trees to get from our house to the road, but we were climbing over trees and under trees and across power lines and over mudslides and everything to get down here. And before we even got here, we noticed our Sunday school room was missing.
Saturday we came down here and we were trying to find it with my drone and like just driving up and down 64, and we couldn't find it up until a few days afterward and realized we had drove past it, you know, a dozen times. It flowed down the creek, I guess, down, during the floods.
Obviously the church had about a foot of water in it, and I mean, it was just a mess. As soon as the power got back on, we got dehumidifiers down here, and as many people could come help, and we cleaned out and did the best we could just so we could have service on Sunday. For the last 3 weeks, we've been moving just enough stuff in to have service, and then it all has to go back out. We're over that hill where we don't have to keep moving out and moving in. And we've got a new Sunday school room being delivered. We're super grateful. We've had members of our diocese and other dioceses contribute. And first they all started sending supplies up, and because we were flooded out, we had nowhere to put it. So we partnered with a local Baptist church up the road, and they let us use their fellowship hall to unload all the supplies that were sent in, and we worked as best we can to distribute it to people that need it. The thing about it is other people needed volunteer help way worse than we did. I mean, there are people literally just a mile down the road that not only lost their home, but lost the property their home sat on.
When we first got on the Starlink at our neighbor's house, we got all of our dozens and dozens of texts and voicemails and all that. And among that was a call from this funny guy called Brian. And listening to his voicemail was comforting, because ARDF thought about us and reached out. And they'd done so, I think, a day or two before. But even just to have that be one of the voicemails to respond to, that was really comforting. Connecting with him, just wrapping our heads around what even the first steps might be in a situation like this, that was really helpful to talk to him.
Brian with ARDF reached out to me the day right after the storm, immediately after, and we've been coordinating with them. They've been a great help. And his first, conversation was, is there anything you need right now? You know, what can we do to help?
The ACNA churches from all over responded directly to ARDF's request to serve and to help. And you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would believe, the amount of parishes that said, hey, I will go, just tell me where to go. That was the most encouraging part, because as you see in the headlines, Asheville, North Carolina was devastated. But it wasn't just Asheville, North Carolina, it was the communities surrounding Asheville. Edneyville, North Carolina, it was Clyde, North Carolina, Cashers, those areas all around. We have Anglican churches in those areas. So my job was to get a hold of those rectors, see how they were doing, seeing what they needed immediately, and then start connecting the churches that wanted to go to make sure that they brought the supplies that the churches were asking for in a timely way. And one of the things we did that was through our Go Grant program, where ARDF provided $500 to any ACNA church that wanted to send supplies up to that area. That could pay for gas, that could pay for the trailer rental, that could get a head start on some of the supplies that they needed to gather, because we know in the face of a disaster like this, it's the timing. We don't need it in 2 or 3 weeks, we need it in 2 or 3 days. And the quickness and ways that people were able to respond was the most encouraging part to me.
I'd say it was a mixture of them saying, what do you need? And also, we kind of know what to bring you, right? And then they showed up maybe a week later, and they had this huge truck full of stuff. And it was really, I think, encouraging for our church to see that, because, you know, being brand new to a denomination and being a small church, but then having this, you know, huge network and tons of resources and people bringing us a truck of stuff to unload, it was really encouraging.
We're a small congregation, so without a lot of financial resources, so Brian has helped get the word out, and like I say, many churches throughout our diocese and the ARDF have all kind of helped sent some funds to help us pay for some of this stuff. I mean, we at one point we had to get ServPro in here to, because we were worried about mold and stuff like that.
When the storm first hit, I was seeing a lot on social media, and I thought it was a lot of hype. And then once things kind of set in the first week, realized, hearing from friends that had gone down or had people down there, that it was a lot worse than what was originally assumed. My brother put together a load of supplies to go down with a friend, and then I followed suit and put together a load and went down 10 days after the storm. A lot of homes were destroyed. There's also a lot of homes that were flooded to the point where they're not safe to live in. Hundreds, if not thousands, of families that will be without temporary housing until spring. And so we started raising funds to buy campers, take campers down for temporary housing.
I was ordained about 10 days before the storm hit. When COVID happened and everything was kind of topsy-turvy then, during that crisis, we started something here at St. Andrews where the response, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. So we started that here at St. Andrews during COVID, and it's just been something that stuck. And so at the end of every service, we close out the service with, right before the dismissal, with God is good, and the congregation responds all the time, and then all the time the response is God is good. And we just have to remind ourselves that this isn't all the time. So even though the time is bad, God is still good. Right. And so if you've laid that foundation, and if you've made those preparations, then even when tragedy hits or turmoil happens, your focus stays on the goodness of God. We've seen it in this. I mean, as much tragedy and disaster as we've seen neighbors helping neighbors. We've seen, people making sacrifices of what they had to give to others. Almost anybody, because we've been out trying to help people, and I mean, you come up to somebody and they're flooded or trees or whatever, and you'll help them a few minutes and they're like, okay, we're good. But who really needs help is, no matter how bad they have it, they're wanting to point you to somebody that needs help worse than they do. And so, it's like I say, we've seen God's goodness in all of it.
is a gentleman from Texas who was affected in the ice storms years ago, and he remembers the Anglican Relief and Development Fund helping his church through those ice storms, and so he wants to also give back. So he's currently on his way to North Carolina. I'll get to meet him next week, and he's going to work to winterize homes, to get them wrapped, to get them safe, and get them able to last through this season, because we know this construction and build back process is going to take a long time, and he has experience through that ice storm on how to get a house ready to live through that, and it's a great example of someone who was affected trying to give back in this situation.
For folks who really want to help, I'd say commit to being a part of things for the long haul, because I know our county is going to be rebuilding for at least a couple of years. And we're not the hardest hit of the counties in Western North Carolina. And as much as we're able, we're going to host and invite people in. We're going to need a lot of help. But I think that's the opportunity that Jesus has in front of us, is to be really practical hands and feet help to folks in this county.
I think the beautiful part about it is that we can put any skill into use on some of our trips. We've got everybody coming that is there to pray, is there to prep food for the team. We've also got people that are highly skilled in carpentry and electrical. If you have an ability, we can plug you in, but also the beautiful thing about this, and I want to really make sure people are aware, this is a 2-year process. We aren't going to be gone after Christmas and not come back. I've already talked to churches. I was in DC in the Falls Church area just last week, and we're talking about having teams go this summer break. So if you want to get on the calendar and put a youth group together, or you have a men's group, or any group in the church that wants to come together and serve, we can plug you in.
We have a real opportunity as a church to step up and show the world what the Great Commission really means, and actually be the hands and feet of Christ, what it means to be a servant, and what it means to actually go do what Christ called us to do. And I think that's the most awesome piece, the beauty and the chaos, is watching the people that have stepped up to do that. And if it wasn't for church organizations and individuals stepping up, this would be way, way worse of a catastrophe. The death toll would be way higher, and we would have way more people out in the cold.
We're a family. I mean, we got to take care of each other, and that's what this has been all about. One of the things that we can do as an ACNA church, as a diocese, wherever you may be in the province, is we can support each other. When things happen, we like to be the vehicle at ARDF to be able to make those things happen and coordinate it. I can't tell you how many times I had a church say, what do they need? Where can I go? And it wasn't, I'm just going to go to Asheville. It's like, if it's not Asheville, I can give you a great example of North Augusta, South Carolina. They needed help. They needed supplies. They weren't getting the headlines, but I had churches from as far away as Murfreesboro, Tennessee drive in to bring supplies to areas no matter where it was. If we all went to the same place, we wouldn't have as good of an effort as we did, but because people worked together, we had a great outcome.